Gamers of Reddit, what is the scariest, most disturbing, or eeriest game you've ever played? In college, 15 plus years ago, my best friend was playing some game with ghost children. My room was directly above the game room. I went to bed for a month listening to children crying. Totally not disturbing. I got a cracked version of Amnesia from a friend. Loaded it, stepped into the main hall, heard scary noises. Have never played again. The subway and amusement park sections of Silent Hill 3 got under my skin the most. Barring of course the surreal, hellish maze in the game's final act. I remember the bathroom creeping me out in SH3. You're locked in the bathroom looking for a way out, until you suddenly realize your reflection in the mirror started moving independently of you at some point. Then the blood starts pouring out of the faucet, the rot growing all over the room and killing you until you escape. That sudden realization that you weren't in a safe place after all was terrifying. Mild as F, but I just don't do well with anything scary. Subnautica, it's not even a horror game, but that game had me on the edge of the seat when I first started playing. All those weird noises, and the Leviathan guarding the ship, man, I was afraid to move anywhere. I've played a ton of horror games. My roommate and I went on a kick where we'd stream ourselves playing every horror game we could find, from big names like Outlast/Outlast 2 and RE7 to lesser known indie games. Subnautica has honestly scared me way more than pretty much every one of those. It's just that feeling that there's something out there, especially when you're diving into new areas. I've literally jump scared myself by accidentally driving the seamoth into a tiny fish without noticing. There's just way more chances to run into something unexpected that won't be given away by the soundtrack or something else. Most horror games really give away their jump scares. Love that game. The original Silent Hill, home alone late at night on an old TV in a drafty 100-year-old house with bad electrics in the middle of BFE nowhere and a thunderstorm. I'm glad this isn't about Silent Hill 2. Don't get me wrong, it's great. But somehow, I got more paranoid about being outside alone in the dark from playing the first Silent Hill game. I think it was the squeaky ghost babies. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. That game effed with your head so much using the sanity meter. For those that haven't played it, here are some of things that would happen. When entering a room, the character may turn into a zombie, and die a moment later or after going through some doors. Attempting to cast Recover may cause the character's torso to explode, resulting in a fake death of the character. When entering a room, the character's limbs may explode in a systematic order, going for the head, the arms and then the torso, resulting in a fake death of the character. When entering a room, the character may shrink or grow while moving. This is most commonly seen in the strange curved quarters of the Forbidden City. When entering a room and when holding a gun, the character can shoot at nothing at random times or turn around and shoot at the camera, leaving a fake bullet hole in the screen. Similar to the prologue of the James Bond movies, and in Resident Evil 2. When attempting to reload a gun, it may go off in the character's stomach, resulting in a fake death of the character. This is most prominent in Max's chapter, for he is the only one without a bigger gun than his flintlock pistols. Revolvers in other chapters have been known to cause this phenomenon to occur as well. When entering a room, the character's head falls off, but can be picked up, and levitates on screen reciting Hamlet. The screen goes black, as if the TV went off. Bugs may appear to be crawling on the TV screen. The game will lower the gameplay volume while displaying a green volume bar, similar to real on-screen TV settings. The screen goes black and changes to video mode, and you will hear your character getting eaten until they die. Even without a break-free control stick, the unseen zombie can still be pushed away. A false sneak preview of a sequel to the game, called Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Redemption, the original planned sequel to Sanity's Requiem, will appear. Upon saving your game, a message will say, "Are you sure you want to delete all of your saved games?" If you say yes or no, the saved files will be deleted. A blue screen of death will appear. You will see the image you see when you start up or reset the game, quoting Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven in Edward Roiva's voice. When the controller is left idle long enough, a still screensaver shot of Pius will appear on the screen until a button is pressed. When you open your inventory screen, all your inventory spaces appear empty. When entering a room, the character may be unable to move or attack, and the player will get a fake system message telling that a controller isn't plugged in, while the many zombies attack them. A fake screen message will appear, congratulating the player for finishing the demo of the game. The camera begins leaning as the sanity meter lowers. Have you all played Soma? It was good, but everything freaked me out even days after I finished it. Funny enough, as scary as the game was, it was the story for me that freaked me out the most. All these robots bearing the clone consciousnesses of their originals, only to find out they can't see their fingers, their face or their body, forever trapped in the mechanical mess that laid on the floor. They would cry out in confusion and frustration since they couldn't move or see their loved ones ever again. That stuff really hit me hard. SCP Containment Breach. I am not trying to sound like a manly badass, but there are few horror games that can scare me in the same way as SCP Containment Breach. I always quit the game early because I get scared of the sculpture and don't feel like playing after that. I didn't know SCP was a game. I thought it was just a collection of articles about weird shit that eventually starts self-referencing other articles until you're too deep inside the rabbit hole, all around the idea that it's all written by a company that houses that weird shit. Spooky's House of Jump Scares. It starts off cartoony with the cardboard cutouts, but it goes downhill fast. And they keep doing the cardboard cutouts to keep you on your toes. Note to anyone searching for it on Steam, it's free BTW, although there is also a paid HD remake. It is now called Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, after the developers received a cease and desist from a German company trying to trademark the name Spooky House. And I agree, that game starts all cute, but soon takes a dark turn. Outlast games are way too intense for me. Shit gets over the top and there's tons of really good jump scares. I love horror games, but I can't play it for more than 30 minutes at a time without getting mild anxiety and feeling panicked. Another game that's similar is Alien Isolation, but I love that game so I don't mind the stress. The Outlast games pull no punches. I like to think I have a high tolerance for that stuff, but the scene in Whistleblower, where you're stuck in a locker watching a guy basically get his dick sawed off, and a makeshift vagina drilled into him, was more than enough to make me stop playing for a little bit. Great games, but not for the faint of heart. I couldn't play Half-Life. Never even saw the first enemy. The sounds and suspense stressed me out too much. Dead Space got me too. I've played plenty of horror games but couldn't do those. I'm sure there were a couple others between those two I'm forgetting. Just some of them strike me the wrong way. When I was 10 or 11, I played this PS1 game which always freaked me out. I don't remember the name, but there was a story segment at the start of a dude with wings. The king got jealous and ripped the wings off this guy and threw him into an acid lake. Guy wakes up, throws a scarf around his melted neck, then the game starts. Scary for my 10-year-old self. I think it was an 18-rated game. Alien Isolation. You get guns and you fight androids and other people, but the xenomorph is indestructible. If he catches you, you're dead. FEAR is the perfect blend of action and horror. You never feel trapped and you can always fight your way out of a situation. I don't dig survival horror games where the scary part is not having weapons and having to hide or run away from everything, or the controls are so bad to make the gameplay more difficult. Looking at You, Resident Evil. Not really a horror game, but the Bethesda Fallout games can be pretty f-king scary. Walking through an old abandoned building when you hear growling and screeching of ghouls can be unsettling. Special shoutouts to the Dunwich building in Fallout 3 and Dunwich Borers in Fallout 4. FEZ actually weirded me out severely. It starts off innocent as Mario Brothers, soon you encounter puzzles as challenging as Zelda puzzles. Eventually it reaches missed levels of complexity, where you're deciphering multiple codes and interpreting obscure clues. Just when you thought you grasped the perspective-shifting concepts, it throws everything for a loop again. The puzzles reach the point where it's impossible without doing outside research. Obsessed with getting every last piece, you start to just Google the answers, and come to find that despite hacking the game, nobody has actually solved the final puzzle to this day. At 3 a.m., after hours of play and during a manic-depressive time in my life, I was researching the creepy encoded poetry with references to Masonic sacred geometry, and clues like the lists of dates hidden in the game's soundtrack that nobody knows the significance of. Considering the game's theme of higher dimensional beings trying to teach lower dimensional beings how to see beyond their own perspective, I seriously felt like the game itself was a message from a higher dimensional being trying to teach me the same. I felt small, humble, and lost in a confusing universe. Phil Fish, FEZ's creator, may have been an a-hole, but he was a genius. Everything about Bloodborne is disturbing and eerie, the atmosphere, the monsters, the unpredictability of the world itself. By far the most tense I felt playing a video game. Bloodborne is scary, but scary isn't the right word to describe it. There is something deeply maddening about it. Parts of Bloodborne feel like you are traversing through some kind of trip through a twisted unreal dreamscape, where things don't fully make sense. Almost like something so dark and evil deep down inside the very essence of the atmosphere. The shrieks and crying noises, the random bursts of laughter from behind doors, the artistic design, the cries of disturbed confused anguish from the townsfolk. Little details such as knocking on doors and just hearing "give us more blood" and nothing more, or walking by some doors and just hearing women hysterically laughing in this disturbing manner. Or when you first talk to Father Gascoigne and he just whispering to you in a terrifying manner, not raising his voice, just rumbling, deeply and darkly at you. And the weird thing is that you get this feeling of almost normalcy in the madness. That this is the world you're in, with all the horror and little snippets of demented lunacy. The world isn't abnormally maddened, it is just mad. It is almost an inherently disturbing world, almost like an alternate reality to the world we live in today in terms of just the way things work, and how people work. It's almost as if everyone is going through the same bad trip on acid alongside you. The setting is literally dripping, oozing with richness and atmosphere. I am trying to think of a movie which conveys the sense of horror that Bloodborne gives, but I can't. The closest I can think of is Lovecraft. There is no game that has filled me with a worse sense of dread than Condemned: Criminal Origins. Yes, the graphics aren't great and there are a few things that aren't great, such as the story or a couple levels, but still. I have yet to play a game that has such a good sense of suspense, dread, and fear of the unknown. It has such good enemy reveals, such as the mannequins in the department store, or the starving corrupted beings in the sewer. It uses audio and visuals perfectly, and has very good foreshadowing, such as how you can sometimes look behind you and catch a glimpse of the late-game enemies, or how it purposefully misleads you for things such as the locker jump scare, or how SKX isn't the matchmaker. Overall, CCO is a phenomenal game and I highly suggest everyone to play it, if they want a great psychological horror game. 2 games. The first being Silent Hill 2, I decided to play that one night alone in my house with all the lights off. Played for 20 minutes, scared the shit out of me, turned it off and never touched it again. The second one was The Suffering, a game about a prisoner on a haunted island prison. During the game you'd hear voices, one nice, the other demonic. This game didn't bother me a lot, did play it in the dark. What was funny though is it freaked my younger brother out. He sat there watching me play for maybe 2 minutes and heard the voices and then he clapped his hands and said nope, not dealing with this shit and left lol. Silent Hill. It's a horror video game where the world goes insane, kinda like a Tool video, actually, every so often. The transition is triggered by an air raid siren. This kind of alternate world/easy transition to madness horror gets to me. I played Silent Hill this summer before starting a new school. First week of school, everything goes fine. Second week, mostly fine, then Friday at about 2 p.m., an air raid siren. All the other kids had gone to this school for years and are just sitting there, ignoring it. I'm losing my shit. That was a fun talk with the school counselor. Here we go, Super Paper Mario. Well, not the beginning but more towards the end, like chapter 6 end. I find the fact that this dude destroys everything just for finding his love scary. Think about it. All that's left is a blank world. Nothing. And the rest? Well, CH7 you're in hell sort of. Especially that river, oh god. CH8, all worlds destroyed and that the true final boss betrayed the supposed antagonist. As silly as it sounds, Spooky's house have jump scares. I've played almost every horror game I can get my hands on, and so when the game was first in beta I played it on Steam. After a while you start to get into a pattern with most horror games, you start to lose that sense of dread of what is coming next. While Spooky's house isn't even close to realistic, has very little real horror elements, and doesn't try to convince you otherwise, its cartoon graphics and slowly evolving gameplay lulled me into a false sense of safety. I can handle jump scares, especially cute ones, and as you progress down the floors you get more and more used to them. But after a while the game changes, and whenever you feel yourself finally prepared for anything it gives you something new, something far more sinister than the cute and cartoony appearances would indicate. With each new twist the game made me lose my sense of readiness and caught me totally off guard. It really gave me a sense of fear for what would come next, even though the game itself was nothing sinister. The first 30 minutes of RE4 was some of the best horror I've ever played. Despite having a lot of power, you're well armed, you have a lot of methods of self-defense, and the game allowed a lot of evasive actions for the time. The villagers were just too numerous and unyielding. You barricade the house you're in. They burst in. You shoot like mad and they just keep coming. You run upstairs. Jump out the second-story window. There are still more swarming you. Then this F-cur with a chainsaw comes at you at full speed and he takes more hits than everyone. You're at your wit's end and then a village bell rings and the villagers lose interest in you and answer the bell's toll. The rest of the game is great, but that first scene in particular is how I wish the whole game was like. That moment was sheer panic. It was fight and flight. Perhaps not the scariest, but I'm thoroughly surprised you sir are being hunted hasn't even been mentioned. It's such a subtle and unique form of horror knowing that it's randomly generated terror, so you never know what's next.